Veteran sports journalist and television commentator David Aldridge joins us to discuss his move to The Athletic as editor-in-chief and his love for his hometown and the DC sports scene. Coming up right now on The Rock Newman Show. Welcome to the Rock Newman Show from the campus of historic Howard University located in Washington, D.C. It is my desire to inspire you with personal stories of extraordinary achievement. My guest today is a young man born right here at Freedman's Hospital, which is now Howard University Hospital. He attended elementary and junior high school in Washington, D.C., DeMatha High School in Maryland, and is a graduate of American University. And although he spent most of his career traveling the country as a sports journalist and television commentator, he has always made his home in Washington, D.C. He says both the city and its sports teams hold a special place in his heart. Joining me now is David Aldridge, the new editor-in-chief of The Athletic. Thank you so much for joining us here today on the Rock Newman Show.
Thank you, Rock. My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So, man, this is some exciting news we have that in just a little, I think we're looking at about 10 days.
Yeah, a couple weeks.
You are going to make an official start. You're once again making a break from your current vocation or your current job at TNT. And you're going to take over as editor-in-chief of the Athletic,
the
Athletic DC.
Yeah.
Tell us what the Athletic DC is.
Well, look,
and what it's going to be.
Well, it's these two billionaires, right? Started this a couple years ago. They wanted to start sports websites around the country. Currently, they're in, I think it's 40 cities. Or areas of the U.S. and Canada, basically every major city in the United States, plus Toronto and Montreal. And in each one of those cities, they've put staffs together to cover teams in those cities. So in D.C., we have websites up already, the Athletic D.C. If you go to theathletic.com, you'll see the drop-down menu. It shows you all the cities that we're in.
Right.
So you just click on Washington, D.C., and it takes you to the page, and it's all the teams in the area. We're in the process of hiring people to cover all the teams in the area. We've got the football team covered. We will have the Wizards covered in a few weeks, I hope. The Caps, we've hired a guy to start covering them immediately, and we're talking to people about the Mystics. The Nationals will get it done. It's hard to do the Nationals because they're in season.
Yeah.
So a lot of the people that we would like to talk to are covering them right now, so it's hard to get them to stop covering them, which we understand. So, but yeah, it's basically just, if you want to know about Washington sports, you go to theathletic.com.
And it's an online, straight up online publication.
It's online, it's all digital. The great thing is that there's no ads, no pop-up ads. You click on it, you don't have to take a quiz. You click on it, you don't have to answer a question. You click on it, you don't get sent to some website that you didn't want to go to. You get the story that you clicked on. You
know what, David? That's very interesting you say that. And I want to ask you, I don't want to necessarily, get so much in the weeds at all.
Sure.
But the viewer, the reader, not seeing any ads. What's the business model, how to stay in business?
Subscriptions. It's all subscriber-based. All of it. It's $5 a month, and if you click on it, there are ways to get it for less, for a 30% discount. If you go to theathletic.com, again, click on it. There's some specials that they are introducing for people who are just signing up. So yeah, that's the model. Is we think that people will pay $5 a month, which is one less trip to Starbucks per month. For good coverage. And you don't just get DC. That's the thing. Like, if you if you subscribe, you not only get the DC coverage, you get every city. You get all 40. Plus you get the national coverage that we have on baseball and football and basketball, college basketball. So it's really, for a value standpoint, you can't do better.
You know, I saw a quote of yours where you're saying, hey, you have no axe to grind with the Washington Post,
Nope.
and what you guys are doing is not looking to try to put the Washington Post out of business.
Yeah.
So if one asks the question of who's your competitor, is it the Undefeated?
Well, to a certain degree, yes. But it's also the Post. It's, you know, there's other websites in town that cover DC sports. But my point on that was simply, look, I love the Post. I worked there for 9 years. They hired me when I was 22 years old.
Right.
They put me in a position to do things that I never thought I would get to do. So I will always love that paper. But I don't think any paper, as I said, I don't think any paper can't stand a little competition.
Right.
That's all.
Sure.
You know, any publication can stand a little competition. So we're going to compete. You know, we hire good people. We expect to break stories. We expect to be the place where people go to read, not just the scores, because they get that already. We want to provide some in-depth coverage, because nowadays, Rock, you know, 5 minutes after the game, everybody knows who won, and they've probably seen the highlights already.
Sure.
So we're not. You can't just write a game story anymore. You have to provide something beyond the game story. What am I paying? What am I getting for my $5 a month?
Sure.
Well, I think if you go to The Athletic, you're going to see some good in-depth reporting from people that know the teams and know what the stories are and how to get them out.
Okay. We just mentioned the Washington Post a couple of times.
Yeah.
I got a couple of names I want to ask you about.
Sure.
Get some thoughts and some reflections.
Okay.
George Solomon.
George hired me, you know, so I'm always going to be grateful to George. He had no reason to hire me at 22 years old. None. He could have. It's the Washington Post. They pick who works there. They don't.
Sure.
You know.
Now, and you had just come from American University.
I had, yeah.
You were the editor.
I was the editor of the paper my junior year, and then my senior year, I actually had a friend of mine who I went to AU with, who was on the desk at the Post.
Right.
And Mike Trilling, who you probably remember.
Yes.
Mike was the high school sports editor there, and he was an AU grad.
That was what year?
That was this was in 1986.
Okay.
So he would bring in AU kids. He would hire AU kids to cover high schools, basically. So he said, come on down, cover some high school football, see if you like it, see if we like you, which I did for a year. I did basketball and football mainly. They had an internship, which I applied for and got, so I was able to work there after I graduated all summer. So I basically covered the Orioles all summer. And then I thought when the internship was over, I thought I was going to have to leave, but they had what they call a general assignment job, which is whatever comes up, you cover it. And George offered it to me, you know. And again, that's why I'll be grateful for whatever reason he saw something in me and was willing to take a chance on it. And if you look, and I've always said this about George, if you look at his staff in 1986, 87, it looked real different from everybody else's staff. You know, you had Don Huff on high schools, you had Anthony Cotton there covering the Bullets, you had Mike Wilbon there covering Maryland college basketball, you had me, you had Christine Brennan covering the football team. I mean, George didn't need a focus group to tell him diversity was important.
You know what? I bring up his name because, you know, George. I had some real debates with George.
So did I.
Some screaming matches.
So
with
did
him.
I.
But I'll tell you what, man. When one looks back over the history of the sports the whole paper, but the sports section of the Washington Post, and look at the giants who have come out of there, who worked under George, who George brought in, and what certainly appeared to be his sense of wanting to create real diversity. A whole lot of people talk about diversity in all aspects of life, including sports, and they give it lip service.
That's right.
George made hires of individuals who were absolutely integrated the paper, and they were prominent in their positions. I remember we were talking before we came on here, but when David Dupree was with them,
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this was not, it wasn't a one-off. It wasn't, okay, I'm done with diversity now. I'm just going to hire some more white guys. No, he just kept, he kept after me. He hired Mike Freeman. He hired Jay Adonde.
Yeah.
You know, he hired Rachel Nichols. I mean, all these people that have come through that have gone on to do great things in journalism. He hired them, and at a young age, not when we were established and people knew who we were, when we didn't have nothing, when we didn't know if we were any good.
Yeah. So you know, I don't want to. Lord knows I don't want to give him too much love.
Credit. Exactly. Exactly.
but one would have to surmise that he didn't just hire people willy-nilly. He had an eye for. He really had an eye for talent.
Yeah, there weren't too many mistakes.
Yeah,
if you look at the track record.
Yeah, and that talent attracted just readership, man.
Yeah,
and the talent, as I said, has gone on, you know, to big things.
Yeah,
to wit, Michael Wilbon.
Well, Mike is a mentor of mine. I mean, you know, I came there, and Michael was still covering. At the time, he was covering the NFL. He had not gotten to column yet. He was a reporter still, national reporter covering football. But, you know, Mike took me under his wing. He gave me advice, talked me off a few ledges when I wanted to go cuss George out, and was a big brother to me, you know, and really helped me out a lot when I was starting the business, learning how to be a reporter. Introduced me to a lot of people, and really paid it forward. And I'll always, again, be grateful to Mike for that. I mean, he helped me out a lot, and a lot of other young reporters who needed somebody to look up to, someone to emulate, right? You know, somebody who looked like me, right? And you didn't see, even then, if you leave the newsroom, you didn't see too many people who look like you in the press box.
Yeah, sure.
So Mike was one of the few people that looked like me, and Bill Rhoden was another one at the New York Times who had no reason to put an arm around me, but did, and gave me advice, and you know, told me to look out for this, and you know, was really wise beyond his years. So people like that really were helpful.
So to the aspiring journalist who's watching here tonight, you just said Wilbon talked you off a couple ledges when you were getting ready to go cuss Solomon out. So you were the writer, he was the editor.
Yeah.
To that aspiring journalist, share why there is that kind of debate that goes on between the writer and the editor.
Well, you always, when you're covering a team, after a while, if you know, you kind of figure, you know what's going on with a team. And so you know what the story is, and you know how to write it or how to report it. Sometimes your editor has a different view, you know, and since they're the boss, you have to do what they say, or you know, or you could quit, you know. But so you have these conflicts about doing this, doing that. I would get angry. I mean, I'm not tooting my own horn. I was pretty good on the beat now. I didn't get beat too often now. Maybe once or twice a year. And George would be furious with me, and I would be like, George, I broke 17 stories in a row. So things like that would come up. Days off. I've worked 38 days in a row. I need a day off, you know. So all the things that come up between employers, the same stuff.
So what stands out? You say broke stories. You know, you were on the beat, and when you're on the beat, your job is to be first.
That's right.
So so George's position then was, you just did 17, but you didn't get 18.
Never get beat.
You got to get them on.
You can never get beat.
Right.
That was his philosophy.
So as you reflect back to those what are now earlier times.
Yeah.
What's a couple of standout when you were first? What's a couple of things you scooped first that stands out?
Well, I mean, when I was covering the Bullets, I mean, remember Bernard King and Wes Unseld got into a fight, and Bernard basically threatened to shoot him.
Because anybody that would get a fight with Wes
Unseld, exactly, exactly,
right,
exactly. So you know, draft picks, you know, getting the draft picks first. When I was covering the football team, it was, you know, Mark Rippon getting cut, you know, things like that. All kinds. I mean, it's hard to remember back then.
Sure. And that comes again, covering. And then building relationships, building trust.
That's right.
Having your resource, having your sources.
People trusting you, basically. You know, and saying, you know, don't quote me, but this is happening or that's happened. You know, And so that comes with time. It comes with people. You have to build relationships with people to the point where they feel comfortable telling you things they're not supposed to tell you. That's the beat writer's job.
So you went to DeMatha High School.
I did.
And another journalistic giant went to DeMatha High School. His name is James Brown.
JB, yeah.
Your thoughts?
Well, JB is another guy. Now, I didn't have the day-to-day relationship with JB that I had with Wilbon and some of the others, but obviously when you see somebody rise through the ranks from he was the analyst on the Bullets when I first started seeing him on TV.
After he left Xerox.
After he left Xerox, that's right, that's right. And then became a sideline reporter, then became an anchor, then became an anchor on the evening news, and then he's just built this real, you know what you're getting when you get JB on a story.
Yeah.
You're getting class, you're getting integrity, all of those things, and that's what I look at when I see him. So the times I have seen him, I've told him how much I appreciate the example he set for me and for other people about how to handle your business. And you never hear nothing about JB off the air. There's no scandal. There's no nothing, because he lives his life the right way. So just a real role model for me, again, as a young person growing up. And when you find out, oh, he went to DeMatha too? Oh, he's from here too?
Yeah.
That's, and I talk, just a quick aside, that's what Jim Vance meant to me growing up. As a young black man in D.C. And you turn on the TV and see somebody that looks like you every night doing the news. And
professional.
Yeah.
And maybe the coolest man on the planet.
I remember one time I saw Vance over at Tacoma Station at the Jazz Club.
Yeah.
And I had to be like 35 years old then. And I was like, Vance over there. Yeah. He was the coolest dude in the room every time.
Right. All the time.
All the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
I asked you about James Brown because I did something this morning at about 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
Anybody that knows James Brown knows he's up and praying and doing his thing early in the morning. So I sent him a text. I said, I got David Aldridge on today.
Yeah.
I said, any nuggets I need to know? I'm looking for something I can stick in, anything. And here's what he wrote back.
Okay.
I certainly know David, but not exceedingly well. My overarching thought that comes to mind about him is a man of integrity and character. That his broadcast reporting efforts have always been about accuracy, honesty, getting at and reporting the truth versus trying to make the story about him or the promotion of his brand. His brand is transparency and an unambiguous relaying of issues such that people trust him, particularly when reporting on controversial topics or in politically charged times.
Yeah. Wow.
That's what JB texted me back this morning.
Amazing.
I thought I'd share that with you, man.
Thank you. Well, that's amazing. That's very nice of him to say
That's a testament coming from JB.
That is.
That's a hell of a testimony.
It certainly is.
Yes.
I appreciate that.
So we are here in 2018.
Right.
3 years after you were born. I remember watching Tommy Smith and John Carlos at the Olympics in 1968 in Mexico,
with the fist,
giving the Black Power salute.
Sure.
That was obviously politicizing the Olympics, politicizing sports.
Sure.
Fast forward 50 years, they stood and held a fist. Kaepernick and players in the NFL are kneeling, politicizing sports.
Sure.
There are those voices that say they don't mix, and you say?
I say sports and politics have always mixed. What is a ban on black players in baseball but a political stance? It is that's a political stance. What is, if you go back and look at the anthem, because I was very curious about this, because people kept saying, well, they're protesting the anthem, even though they weren't, and they aren't. But if you look at the anthem and you look at Francis Scott Key, the guy who wrote the anthem, and you look at his stances politically in the 1800s as someone who defended the rights of slave owners to take their slaves back. And if you look at all the verses of the anthem.
And the third, especially the third
third
verse of the anthem.
That's right, when he talks about slaves who were fighting on the side of the British in the War of 1812, and how they were wrong to do that.
Yeah.
That's political.
And they would not be spared.
That's right.
The brutality.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's political. So the NFL does nothing but wrap itself in politics with its embrace of not only the armed forces, but one version of the armed forces. You don't hear about the veterans who support Kaepernick and the veterans who support the other players who are kneeling, because they know that's what they fought for, the right of people to protest those conditions that they do not agree with and that they feel are hurting their people. The whole point of him kneeling came from a Green Beret who was a former NFL player, who said you shouldn't sit during the anthem. Kneeling is a sign of respect for the troops, because that's what troops do when one of their own is wounded or killed in action. They kneel. When they go to the gravesite, they kneel. So sports has always been political. It's just you don't agree with this particular political stance that these players are taking.
And so today you burn your Nikes.
Right, but you already paid for
There
it.
you go. There you go. There you go. Your thought about Nike really doubling down on the side of what Kaepernick was doing, and of course they're accused of crass commercialism. Well, that's an accusation.
Yeah, I mean, I would say this: I don't hold Nike. I don't think Nike is the uber villain. I don't think they're the bastion of virtue either. They're trying to sell some shoes, all right? So they can sell some shoes to young people who are down with Kaepernick, who feel like Kaepernick represents their point of view. And that's fine. They didn't have to do it, though. They could have still sold a lot of shoes and not taken this stance. So I give them credit for that, for saying we want to be on the right side of history. And sell some shoes. So you can, both things can be true at the same time.
And the gentleman, let me use another word, the individual, down at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, his foray into an area of which you've covered now forever.
Yeah.
Your thoughts about Donald Trump?
Well, that's just, look, he's appealing to his base in a very kind of venal and crass way, as he does with just about everything that he touches. I am somewhat moved by the notion that this is a guy who couldn't get into the NFL. They wouldn't let him in the NFL. And it wasn't you or me rejecting him. It was people who looked like him, who had money like him, who said, nah, we don't want you in the club. And so I think he's always kind of had it in for them as a result of that. But it's an easy argument when you appeal to the base nature of some people who want to be appealed to in that manner and who want to react in that manner, don't want to give any thought to the issue, don't want to accept the fact that maybe there are people who disagree with them on legitimate grounds, and wrap it in patriotism, flag, anthem, all that stuff that nobody is even protesting. So I'm not surprised by it, because this is what this guy's always done.
I still believe that the greatest running back in the history of NFL is James Nathaniel Brown.
I agree.
He's been quoted as saying, talking about Kaepernick, and that Kaepernick shouldn't get paid or shouldn't have commercial benefits as a result of his taking a stance on social justice or human rights. Yeah,
well, I disagree with Jim on that, and I don't know how he came to that conclusion, but I would disagree with him. As much as I respect Jim Brown in a lot of ways, I just disagree with him on that. I mean, I'm pretty sure the First Amendment hasn't been revoked yet. The fact that Colin Kaepernick is taking a knee and other players are taking a knee or raising a fist during the playing of the anthem, which nobody pays any attention to. And if you've ever been to a football game, all these people who are complaining about this kneeling, I don't see them exactly standing at attention with their hands over their hearts most of the time. When the anthem's being played, they're usually getting their second or third beer at that point. So I think there's a certain amount of hypocrisy. And I think, again, it's people who want to have that political point of view who find a way to support that point of view. And I would, again, with all due respect to Jim Brown, who I respect for, in so many ways for what he did when the heat and the light was on him the most, I just disagree with him on this one.
Gotcha. Staying, in the political arena for a minute, so whether it was the Golden State Warriors or many other now championship teams who have refused to go to the White House. Again, politics, sports, politics. Any thoughts on, whether they have an obligation, any criticism that they don't, or applauding that they take that stand?
I will always support anyone's political point of view, as long as it doesn't injure other people with the application of that point of view. So if the guy, what's his name, Tim Thomas, who was I think his name was Tim Thomas, the goaltender in Boston with the Bruins, when they won, he didn't want to go to the White House because Obama was president. Okay, you're entitled to do that. So these players are entitled to do that too. They're entitled not to go if they don't want to go for whatever reason. They're not obligated to go. It's a photo op anyway. I mean, I was when the Warriors won the first time, I think. I went to the ceremony with Obama. It's a photo op, and everybody wants their picture taken with the president or with Nancy Pelosi or with Steph Curry or whoever it is, right? That's okay. It is what it is. And it's not going or not going isn't going to affect the Republic in any meaningful way. So, to each his own.
You say everybody likes to get pictures taken with the president.
Sure.
You got yours taken?
I did.
You got yours taken with the president?
I did.
What was that exchange like?
It was weird because I wasn't expecting to interview him. We knew he was coming to the game, but the original idea was he would come down and sit at the table with Kevin Harlan and Reggie Miller, who were calling the game, and I was a sideline reporter. But I guess the Secret Service looked at the setup and said they didn't feel comfortable with that setup. They would feel more comfortable if he was in an area that they could kind of control. And it just so happened that meant he would be in an area near me. So they said, do you want to interview him? And I said, yeah, of course I want to interview him.
Also meant you were a lucky sucker.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And it was great. The thing, what was cool about it was that it wasn't like talking to the president. It was like talking to a guy who really likes and follows sports.
Yeah.
You could just tell he's he pays attention to it. Like he had the things he was saying were the things that people who were paying attention would say about, in this case, the Bulls, the team that he liked, but about the NBA in general. It wasn't just Joe fan. Like most, I should say, I think most presidents don't really know sports that well, but Obama does.
Yeah, which is demonstrated in him filling out his brackets and giving his justification for
why
and all the rest. Let me ask you, going back to the Athletic for a moment.
Sure.
There is so much being made of the incident at the U.S. Open with Serena Williams and the umpire.
Yeah.
And the thought that what Serena did, if you want to call it, aggressive, overly aggressive, unsportsmanlike, whatever. But in comparison, you juxtapose what she did with the McEnroes and the Ilan Nastasis and so many other of the male competitors that it paled in comparison.
No question.
Yet she was, more harshly penalized than anyone. So talk to us about that intersection, man, of you got, again, still predominantly male figures.
Yeah.
Officiating, overseeing, the sport with women participating, and that, again, that intersection of male mindset. Because at the risk of making this an overly long question, it was obvious that the little guy sitting up there was little-minded at that point, and as opposed to de-escalating, took offense at being challenged by this strong black woman.
There's no doubt in my mind, again, two things, three things, multiple things can be true at the same time. Did she go at him hard? Yes. Did she not stop? No, she didn't. She kept going in on him. But my experience over 30 years in covering sports is that the really good referees, the really good officials know how, to your point, de-escalate a situation where whoever's yelling at them and whatever they're saying, you say, I've heard you. I've listened to what you've had to say. Now you need to stop, or I'm going to bang you. I'm going to tee you up, or I'm going to throw you out. I'm going to do whatever it is that referees and umpires can do. He didn't do that. And so I think there was definitely, in my mind, a paternalistic kind of approach. How dare you talk to me in that manner? Now, part of that, I think, is just kind of the nature of tennis, I think. But there's no question to me that part of it was misogynistic. I mean, you know, like, I'm not going to let this woman yell at me, you know, and the fact that she's not cursing or not, you know, saying it doesn't matter. Right. She's not going to talk to me like that. So I think there's no question in my mind that that was part of his reaction. If he had just said, knock it off, Serena, I've heard you, or Ms. Williams, knock it off, Ms. Williams, I've heard you, you need to stop, wouldn't have happened, wouldn't have gone that way. And to me, the comparisons to Macro and all that don't make any, none of that matters. He ended the match, essentially, by doing what he did. That's what was offensive to me, was she was probably going to get beat anyway. I mean, Naomi played great.
So there was so much taken away from Naomi.
Naomi played great, and she was probably going to win anyway. But let her win the match. Don't give her the match. It was what he did.
What, as someone who has done this now, from so 22, so you've done
22
this more,
years in TV, 31 years.
I was going to say, you've done this, you've covered sports now for more than 30 years.
Yeah.
Can you look back and share with us a couple of times where you're supposed to be that dispassionate observer?
Oh, sure.
But you're human.
Oh, sure.
Some of the few of the most exciting moments of your coverage of sports, no matter what the sport was.
Sure. No, I mean, there's been a few. I mean, I always go, one of the, you know, if you covered basketball in the 90s and you got to go cover the Dream Team in Spain in the Olympics, that was, to me, the highlight of my career.
Does that mean that basketball is more near and dear than anything else?
To me, yes.
Okay.
I love basketball. And I say that as someone who couldn't play it at all. Okay. But I appreciate everything about basketball appeals to me. It's the athleticism, number one, but it's also the improvisational skill. I always feel like I see something new every night. Somebody does something that I've never seen before. The fact that they're not wearing helmets, they're not padded up, you can see them.
Fully exposed.
So you see all the emotion and all the energy and all the passion and all those things. And at least until recently, our seats were pretty close. So you get to see it all up front, right? So, I mean, it's all of that appealed to me and made it just a great game to cover. And then the fact, I mean, candidly, the fact that you see people of color excelling at the highest levels is something that is always going to be close to me. And to see Michael Jordan in his prime, you know, I just don't know how much better it could be for someone who covers sports. You know, it would be like seeing Ali in his prime. I didn't get to see Ali in his prime, but I would imagine Ali 65 to 67. You just are like, wow,
just unbelievable.
It was like that, I'm sure, right? Well, like watching Jackie Robinson in his prime, right? You know, so I got to see that, and as part of the Dream Team and everything that they meant to basketball around the world. That was really the catalyst for basketball becoming a global sport, because all of the kids that were growing up in Europe and Africa and South America that saw that team play, they were like, wow, we could do that. I could do that. And so now you see this explosion in the NBA as a global sport. So that to me was like the most exciting thing I got to cover in my career. But I mean, I've covered World Series, I've covered Super Bowls, covered the Indy 500. I mean, You know, I've had a chance to cover a lot of great events.
Okay, so you bring up Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
And in 2018, inevitably.
Yeah.
And 14 and 15 and 16.
Yeah.
There is the comparison and the contrast. Who is the greatest of all time?
Right.
That's a wonderful conversation in the barbershop.
In a bar.
Yeah, man.
Right.
So a few weeks ago in the barbershop,
yeah.
that came up as a debate between them.
Yeah.
And I was much older than the other folks who were sitting there.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I could really muddy this conversation, what you mean, OG? And I was like, you remember a guy by the name of Wilt Chamberlain?
Yes, right.
Remember a guy by the name of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar,
yeah.
who still has scored
#1
thousands of points more
yeah.
than anyone else, and a guy, but Jordan got 6 rings. Bill Russell.
He's got too many rings, not enough fingers.
11. 11. You care to take a stab at that? How do you answer that question?
I think it's impossible to answer. The reason why it's impossible to answer is that each one of those players played in a completely different era than the other players played in. You know, Russell and Chamberlain played in an era where there were 8 teams, right? So in some ways it was easier, so it wasn't as much competition, but in some ways it was harder because every team had 3 All-Stars on it. Yeah. So, and the rules were completely different. The travel was completely different. Jordan played in an era where you could hand check, where you could move guys out of the paint, where you could bump cutters, all those things that you can't do now.
Where Rick Mahorn was able to play and not go to jail.
Exactly, exactly. So it's a completely different era. I always tell people, you have to tell me the rules first. What rules are we playing under? We're playing under 60s rules, we playing under 80s rules, we playing under the rules now. Because those are 3 completely different games. Like Steph Curry couldn't play back then, not because he's not great, but because he would get beat up so physically he wouldn't be able to sustain himself. So I can't answer it.
Yeah.
You know, I think Jordan was the best player I ever saw. I didn't see Wilt in person, so I can't say if he's better. I don't know. I didn't get to see him in person. If I had seen him in person, if I had seen Oscar in person, if I had seen Russell in person, I could give you a better answer. You could probably give a better answer than I could on that.
But you have seen LeBron.
Absolutely.
And so compare the two.
Well, I mean, LeBron is a great, great player. Cerebral, tough, smart, unselfish. I just don't think he or any player in this era has the will that Michael Jordan displayed. To me, what made Jordan the best player I ever saw was his will. He was not going to let you beat him, ever. You know, so
call that ego, call that pride,
whatever,
call that.
Whatever it is, he had more of it than most people. You know, and so his ability to demand more out of his teammates and make them play better than they would play otherwise, to me, makes him a cut above everybody who's playing now. You know, does that mean if they play one-on-one, LeBron would probably beat him because he's bigger, but he might not. So,
you know, man, I'm gonna take the liberty to do this here in terms of Jordan's greatness and that what you talked about, that will.
Yeah.
That this is something that I've shared with my granddaughter who was in the 5th grade, who was complaining about how difficult her workload was.
Right.
And I used an example of me seeing something in Michael Jordan. I got lucky some kind of way and got kind of like the Spike Lee seats at Madison Square Garden when the Bulls were there. And it was towards the end of the quarter. Right. And I mean, when I say towards the end, like, point something seconds on the clock. Yeah. And somebody threw a brick, and it clanged off. Yeah. And every single competitor on the floor relaxed because the buzzer was just getting ready to sound. Right. And Jordan made a breakneck sprint for the ball and flipped it back towards the basket. Yeah. Nowhere close. Right. But I saw something in that moment that was much a part of what separated him from everybody else.
Yeah, never. You always play, not only just play to the clock, but just be smart.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just a combination of knowing what to do, situation, moment, all of that. He just excelled at all of those things. It doesn't mean he was a great three-point shooter, but again, see, the rules were different. People didn't shoot threes back then.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what I tell people is, are you telling me that if Michael Jordan was playing in an era where the three-pointer was important, he wouldn't have been a great three-point shooter? Mm-hmm. He didn't shoot it because he didn't have to. Mm-hmm. But if he had to, he would have been great at that too. So, so yeah, he was always a step ahead of everybody in terms of knowing what the situation called for in a given game.
Yeah. So, I have not followed sports in the last years as I once did.
Sure.
But I've got some memories etched, and I want to ask you about this in terms of single game performances of the game you love most, basketball.
Yeah.
Magic Johnson as a rookie.
Yeah.
That 42-point,
15 rebounds.
15 rebounds,
9 assists,
7,
10,
9,
yeah, something like that.
9 assist game.
Yeah.
Playing center because
Kareem's out.
Alcindor Jabbar could not.
Right.
How does that rank in terms of individual games in the NBA?
Well, just in all honest candor, that was a little before I started covering the league, but obviously that's one of the greatest performances of all time. I mean, the time.
A rookie.
Yeah, for the time, the situation. Yeah. Going without your MVP on the road. Yeah. Against a great Philadelphia team.
Yeah. Point guard posting up.
Yeah, I mean, just doing everything. And again, Magic was good. Magic was really good. Yeah. So that's one of the great ones of all time. I always tell people the greatest defensive performance I ever saw was on Mother's Day in 1993. John Starks was playing against Michael Jordan, and it was the best. I'm not kidding. John Starks played almost a perfect game defensively against Michael Jordan. Mm-hmm. He did everything you're supposed to do. Mm-hmm. He was aggressive. He was physical. He beat him to spots. He put his hands up. He mirrored him. He followed him. He went through screens. He trailed him. He did everything right. And Jordan scored 54.
I think Jordan has impressed you.
Yeah.
So you spent 4 years at the Philadelphia Inquirer.
I did, yeah.
And so obviously during that time, you got to see someone that you obviously were aware of and saw before then at Georgetown. Allen Iverson.
Yeah. I saw Allen. He came back at the end because he had gone to, I think it was Detroit then. But he came. They brought him back basically for a victory lap, and he played the rest of that year. And I've always gotten along. Allen and I have always gotten along. He is a remarkable competitor. I think his compete is what kept him in the league at a high level. There aren't many more people who compete harder than he does. His willingness to sacrifice his body, to throw himself into traffic, to take the hit. I mean, he's got a toughness that is off the charts, off the charts. So I really enjoyed watching him compete. Didn't mean he always won, but he competed every minute he was on the floor. And really, took the Sixers to a high level while he was in his prime. He was a great competitor and he's one of those guys, 20 years from now, people are going to look at his numbers and his shooting percentage, all that, and say, he wasn't that good. But you had to be there to watch him compete, to get the most out of the teams that he was on. That's what made him a great, great player. And I always enjoyed watching him play.
Folks who have a little age on them would certainly remember Morgan Wooten.
Sure.
The coach at the Math.
Yeah.
Do you think it's way far beyond the pale for those folks who say that in terms of being a coach, putting a team on the floor, motivation, X's and O's, that Morgan Wooten ranks among the greats who've ever done it?
Oh, I think that's absolutely correct. I mean, Coach Wooten was always the thing that I always admired about him was he has an incredible decency to him as a human being, first and foremost. And so there's a real humility with Morgan that's not fake, like a lot of coaches who pretend to be humble and really aren't. He really is a humble guy. And I mean, the numbers speak for themselves. I was just at the Hall of Fame up in Springfield a couple of weeks ago for the induction ceremony, and you know, he's got a whole section in the Hall of Fame, in the coaches section, you know, the best coaches ever, because those are the Matha teams, and I was there with Adrian Branch and guys like that. The preparation was there, but also the ability to continue to compete when the game's over and you've lost, or to come back and win. I mean, they always played at a very high level, and you had to be a special team to beat them. Now, I was at one of those games. I was up in Baltimore when they played Dunbar. With Dunbar team with Muggsy and David Wingate and Reggie Lewis. It's the best team I ever saw. But the Matha teams always play very hard, very physical, very smart. And that's a testament to the coaching they got.
And his high school coach. He remained a high school coach throughout, as the Wizard of Westwood. John Wooden remained a college coach throughout. And there seemed to be, you know, 'cause I mean, that's when I was really, really like maniacal about high school sports, about college sports, man. And, and John Wooten, they seem to be twins of sorts.
I think there's probably, I mean, there may be some truth. I know Morgan talked about John Wooten a lot as a kind of a role model for him, you know. But there's no question. And again, we were blessed to grow up in an era here in D.C. in this area where you had Morgan, you had Joe Eden Davidson, you had Bob Wade over at Dunbar. You had so many great coaches in the area over a long period of time, Bob Hedden and all the rest of them. So you got to see really great basketball.
Absolutely.
And that's what kind of fueled my passion for the game, was that you could go, whether it was an inter-high game or a Catholic League game, or you were going to see some good basketball. Or the summer league.
Including the summer league
you go to Jelliff or you go to Urban Coalition, whatever it is, you would see something great.
First time I ever saw Julius Erving.
Is that right?
Was that with the Urban Coalition? World Be Free. People were talking about him, you know, so World Be Free, what? Man, he came down and just jumped all the way out of McDonald's.
Dropped about 60 and went home.
Jumped out of McDonald's. So I'm Googling you. And some kind of way it flipped, popped up on my screen. It was a highlight reel, not of you.
Okay.
The other note that James Brown said is, you know, he didn't have a whole lot of athletic skills. No.
Well, then he's being honest.
but of Steph Curry. And so this morning, 4:30 a.m., I'm watching with the sound mostly down. But a 20 of Steph Curry's greatest highlights. Curry is probably my favorite player in the NBA. And he does things that are borderline impossible. I mean, it's beyond globetrotter stuff, but he does them, and he does them not just wildly, but with a particular authority. Your thoughts about Steph Curry as a player?
Well, he's changed the game. He's changed the NBA game forever. The NBA game used to be played somewhere around the three-point line. Went out to the three-point line, maybe a little above the three-point line, but you knew where the 10 players were going to be most of the time on the basketball court. Well, he has completely flipped the script on that. And the geometry of basketball is different now because literally 35 feet from the basket, if you don't have a hand up, it's going up and it's going in. And so that completely changes defenses. The ability for the 5 defenders to kind of play off of one another he's ended that.
A total spreading of the floor.
Ended that. And so you can't, and then if you combine that with the rules, you can't guard them. You can't guard the Warriors as they're currently constituted.
Right.
You have to hope they miss. That's really all you can do because you can't guard them because of Steph's ability to stretch the floor and his ability to finish in traffic. That's what the truly great players is, as I'm sure you know. The thing that, to me, offensively separates the truly great players from the other ones is their ability to finish in traffic. They get hit, doesn't matter, they make the shot. They go up, somebody's 6 inches taller, doesn't matter, they get a shot over them, it goes in. So the ability for great players, and Steph is a great finisher. Great, not good, great finisher at the rim, is what separates him from, I think, everybody else in the league. And then you add the ball handling and all of that other stuff, which he's excelled at. But it starts with his ability to separate defenders from one another, which makes it impossible to guard as a team defensively.
Staying on his game for just a minute, when Steve Francis was with the Houston Rockets, I had the good fortune of spending a good amount of time traveling with them with Calvin Murphy. Calvin Murphy, who had built his wrist, best free throw shooter ever, had built his wrist through baton twirling. Watching this highlight film, whether it was the shooting or whether it was the no-look passes from an extended position, it seems like this dude has like steroids in his wrists, man.
Very strong. He's strong core, and his hands aren't big. But he can control the ball in a way that few people his size can. Steve Nash could do it too. And Steve doesn't have huge hands, but his hands, I think, are bigger than Steph's. But Steph, and that's a lot of practice, a lot of ball handling practice, a lot of not just ball handling, but to your point, strengthening your wrist so that you can make this pass, which is difficult for someone his size usually to be able to make. So he's put a ton of work in. You can tell. You know, you always got to come back with something. You got to go in the lab and come back with something every summer, and every summer he comes back with something different.
So David, you wrote a piece as the David Aldridge at home in D.C. covering the home and city that I love. And in it, and I just got in my ear here, we only have about 4 minutes left. I cannot believe this is going this fast. But in it, you reference to the Washington's professional football team several times. And you refer to them as the Skins. Is that a conscious effort not to say Redskins?
Yes.
Give me your thoughts on that.
Well, it's look, I've been following them since I was 5 years old. Okay, and I had the lunchbox and the poncho and everything. You know, it's the first team I fell in love with back in the George Allen days. But over the course of time, as you talk to people, as you hear the words of Native Americans, and they tell you about the harm that this word does to their children in terms of self-esteem, in terms of their belief that they are really part of this country. I was affected by that. And so it was my decision, and our policy at The Athletic is that every writer can make whatever decision they want about that word. I will choose not to use it. I cannot guarantee, I told somebody else this, I cannot guarantee you that it will never appear in any column that I write, but it's not going to be very often. Because if I can avoid it, I'm going to avoid it. Just because I think I have to have some empathy for people who are impacted by that word. I'm not impacted by that word. I'm not Native American. So, but other people are, and you have to have some sensitivity to that as a human being.
You've had this journey as a sports journalist. You have 2 boys.
I do.
How old? 14?
14 and 11.
14 and 11. Would you want them, would you invite them to follow this path?
If they want, sure. If they want to be a writer, a sports writer, it's a great profession. I love it. It's been great to me. I've enjoyed every minute of it. If they want to be a lawyer or a botanist, that's fine too. They both love sports, and you know, if they want to be involved in it in some way, I'm going to support them 1,000%.
So to be able to come back I've read it.
Yeah.
And if you could share it in the last 90 seconds that we have, to be
Right.
able to come back now and to be home,
Yeah.
which is probably towards, the end of your professional time.
Yeah.
Tell us what that means.
Well, it means everything because, I've been here my whole life. I mean, other than 2 years when I lived in Bethesda, I've lived in the city my whole life. I'm from D.C. I grew up in D.C. Everything I've gotten out of life, I got because I lived here. And so it's a special place to me. And I think the sports scene in D.C. has reached a certain level of maturity where it's not just about what the football team does, and that's the only thing that anybody cares about.
Yeah.
I mean, now you've got the Caps winning the Stanley Cup. You got the Nats in the playoffs most of the time. The Wizards have been in the playoffs the last several years. The Mystics were in the NBA final or the WNBA finals. So, and Maryland's always a big story. So there's a lot of sports that people are interested in and passionate about. And so it's exciting to me to see that growth. And I wanted to cover it. I wanted to be a part of it, because this is home, and I want to see these teams and how they do, and I want to spend more time with my family. That's the bottom line. It's time.
There, a lot of folks don't know it yet, but there's going to be an emerging power, and it's called the Howard University Football Bison.
There you go.
So we're gonna be calling you down at the
Absolutely.
Athletic.
We already wrote a story on Cam's brother, so it's in there.
All right.
Yeah, it's in there.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, sir.
Man.
My pleasure.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Got to come back.
Absolutely.
Good deal.
All right.
Folks, thank you for joining us this evening. For more information on this program or any other program produced by WHUT, go to WHUT.org. Goodbye, and may God bless you.
This program was produced by WHUT, Howard University Television, and made possible by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.